how long the adolescent age lasts. Well, in our world today, about 62 years. What I have noticed that many people stay in the stage of adolescence forever. Some stay in the stage of first level and some in the second level. These phases are not as much related to period of time as much as they are related to level of consciousness. Development takes place on the axis of consciousness. The only thing that evolves and develops is human consciousness, human capacity to know, to love, and to will. Material things don't evolve, don't develop. Material things create more complex states of being. But changing from one state of being to another state of being is the characteristic of consciousness, you see. And therefore, in order for an individual or a family or a society to move from one level, one phase to the next phase to the next phase, it means developing new worldviews, new understanding of one's own worldview and how this worldview can be expanded, it can be broadened, can be modified, okay? So we talked about two prevailing worldviews that we have in our world and we have experienced that far primarily. These two worldviews were the power-based authoritarian worldview and the identity-based adversarial worldview. There are other characteristics of these worldviews that we didn't touch upon them, and they all have been written in one of my books. Later I tell you about it, and you may want to refer to them because we wouldn't have the time to go through this process. Usually when I talk about a worldview for training purposes, usually we talk about it for 3 days. And here we are going to talk about it for 2-3 hours. So it has to be compressed, okay? Now, before we talk about yet another worldview, the third phase, we have to talk about another concept. And that is the concept of unity. Unity, as you know, is one of the central teachings of the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i teachings revolve around the issue of unity. And therefore, it is essential that we have a deeper understanding of the concept of unity. Okay. Now, reflect on this concept. Unity is the main law of existence. In other words, Everything that exists is the outcome of the operation of law of unity. For example, the physical world, which is comprised of atoms and subatomic particles and all the elements that we have become aware of them, that forces in this world, all of them are interconnected with each other through the law of unity. Okay? If you have an atom which has a nucleus and neutrons and so forth, and they go in a state of unity together, evolve and function. And if you disrupt the unity of atom, what happens? You have exactly atomic explosion. Atomic explosion is when the unity of the atom is taken away. Why? Because existence is dependent on unity. Think of your body. Human body is comprised of many molecules, cells, organs, processes, all of them operating through the law of unity, which means diverse elements coming together, creating a new entity. This is the definition of unity. Unity means convergence of different, diverse entities, two or more entities, to create a new entity, okay? Usually of a higher level. Think again of yourself. The beginning of your being in this world was when the ovum and the sperm of the parents came together in a state of unity in the context of the womb of our mothers, and here we are. That was a signal act of unity. Now, if there have been millions of ovum or millions of sperms, but no ovum or no, the other one didn't exist, we wouldn't be here. We needed two diverse entities, an ovum and a sperm, in order to create a coming together of the act of unity. And here we are. Think of your body, as I mentioned. Human body is the most profound example of the law of unity. Your brain, your heart, your lungs, kidneys, nose, toes, all of them are integrated with each other. They function as a whole. Diverse components have come together and have created your being as you are. Imagine if you were only one big brain and nothing else. Or one big heart pumping, boom, 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 and nothing else. Or lungs, Imagine if you were that. No. We are what we are because of these diverse elements coming together. This is the beauty of unity, because unity takes place always in the context of diversity. Okay? Always. Diverse elements. And this is fundamental to remember. Now, unity is the cause of life. In other words, it is through unity that life begins, and it is through unity that life is preserved. So life is unity and unity is life. They are interconnected. You cannot separate each other. You cannot, for a moment, live without the operation of law of unity. So, because of that, whenever the law of unity is not fully observed, then you have conflict. Conflict is absence of unity. Conflict is absence of unity. And when you have in a marriage, in a family, in a relationship, in a society, conflict, you cannot resolve conflict unless you learn how to create unity. So a true process of conflict resolution is a process of unity creation. So we have to learn the ways of creating unity. Okay? This issue of law of unity then becomes fundamental in the context of marriage. In the context of marriage, unity becomes fundamental because marriage is the very act of unity of two diverse individuals to create a new entity, which is marriage. Okay? And out of this marriage, then comes new creativity, which is the family, children, and so forth. Because the act of unity by itself is a creative process. Whenever you create unity, you're engaged in creativity. You're engaged in creating new things. And the things that you create are usually of higher level. Okay? So, keeping in mind the concept of unity, then we can talk about the third worldview that has been the subject of our discussion so far this morning. Remember, we said the most prevalent worldviews thus far in human societies have been power-based, authoritarian worldview and identity-based adversarial worldview. Now the world of humanity is entering a new phase. And this new phase is the phase of unity-based worldview. New phase. And we already see the signs of movement of humanity towards unity. There are two ways that humanity moves towards unity. There are two ways that worldviews are changed. Okay? Worldviews change either through calamities or through new insights. In other words, people would not change their worldviews unless they are pushed. Some people change it by understanding new things. You know, sometimes you come across a new idea, and suddenly your whole world changes. Worldview and everything changes. For those of us who have become Baha'is in this room, okay? especially those who discovered the Baha'i faith on their own rather than having it from their parents, once you become a Baha'i, suddenly your whole worldview changes. You suddenly see the whole universe, the operation of universe in a new way. Why this is changing worldview? There are several reasons. One, because worldview gives us the sense of self. It defines us. Our worldview defines us. They tell us who we are. It becomes a part of our identity of who we are. And therefore, it is very difficult to change it because we are afraid that if we change our worldview, we change ourselves. That's the reason that traditions become so deeply rooted. That's the reason that human societies constantly try to keep their ways of life. But the laws of development demand that we change. Life by itself is a progressive process, and it demands change. And therefore, human societies have to go through change. Human individuals have to go through the change. And if resist the change, then the change would happen through calamities. How? In other words, what would happen is that the life situation becomes so difficult that we have to change. We function in certain ways, and it works and works and works, and then reaches to the point that no longer works. And then you have to change, you know? This dramatically happened in the context of modern marriages. Modern, you know, good old days, they were good old days for men, okay? Good old days for men were the time that the man says, lady, this is the way we do it. And the lady will say, yes, yes, Your Honor, we do it that way, okay? They obeyed. It was so good. But times changed. And suddenly women said, no. What do you mean, no? You are a woman, you have to say yes. No. And that was the era of chaos in the marriage, right? The marriages suddenly became chaotic. Women would say no. And then you say, okay, I punish you. No, you can't, because as soon as you punish them, they either leave you or they go to the police or they do all kinds of things. And you realize, okay, it's not going to work. The old ways don't work. So you have to develop a new way. Okay? You have to develop a new way. And this is the way what is happening right now. We are in a transition period. And always transition periods are the periods that put a lot of demand and bring a lot of chaos in the situation. So human societies would not change, and human individuals would not change their worldviews unless they are pressed to do it. And in our world, we see that process happening at the collective level, at an alarming level of violence. What has been happening during the first, you see, look what happened in Europe, okay? First World War and Second World War, and a number of other wars in between, okay? These wars all were placed in this highly developed technologically and scientifically and ideologically part of the world. They created the most barbaric act of violence. And all of these countries that they were so proud of who they were, we are Germans, we are French, we are British, we are this, we are that, all of them finally, after all of these calamities, said, let's create a union. We call it European Union. Okay? Why? Because the movement of the history is toward unity. First World and Second World War resulted in creation of United Nations. Why? Because we're beginning to realize that we have to move towards unity. All the organizations that are happening in the world right now around issue of economics, issue of health, issue of environment, all of them are indications of gradual awareness of humanity that we have to no longer violate the law of unity. We have to learn the ways of unity so that we can save this planet environmentally. For example, what the environmental movement means and says, it says the earth is but one country, right? That's what it says. The whole environmental movement is the enunciation in action of the principle that the earth is but one country, which Baha'u'llah said it in 1863. Okay? The whole movements around economic situation that take place in this world, about the health issues that take place in this world, everything that is happening, the internet, the media, the modes of transportation, economic interdependence, all of these pushing humanity towards unity. Realization that our destiny is interconnected. The movements that are taking place for equality, men and women, different races, different nations, and so forth, is the same dynamics and the same principles. So the whole world is moving towards unity. And the societies that resist that, resist change, they go through a period of chaos. So what we saw in Vietnam, in Korea, in China, during the world wars in Japan and all other countries, then we saw it in the Arab world, and now we're seeing it taking over all Arab world, what is happening in Africa, in India, and between India and Pakistan, and all of these conditions that you see around the world. They are processes that push humanity towards unity. So the more conscious we become of law of unity, the easier becomes the transition from the authoritarian, power-based, and adversarial, identity-based worldviews to unity-based worldview. Okay? When we create a united family, or a united society, or a united world, that doesn't mean that you change your identity. You lose your identity. Rather, it means that you expand your identity. In other words, instead of having a limited identity, you begin to have more universal identity. So you become a Japanese and a citizen of the world, a British and a citizen of the world. And in the context of men and women, this law of unity is making men more feminine and women more masculine, so that eventually we develop equilibrium in our personalities as human beings, so that we would have equal level of a feminine and masculine qualities in our beings, rather than being macho on the one hand and with delicate, breakable people on the other hand. We become whole human beings. Law of unity helps us as individuals to become whole, to become complete human beings. In Persian language, insan kamil, We have to become whole human beings. And you cannot become a whole human being unless you create unity in all areas of your life, including unity between the qualities of masculine and feminine, right brain and left brain, all aspects, creativity and rationality and objectivity and all the different ways of knowing and being that we are. You see? So you see how fundamental is this process of development of a unity-based worldview.
Can you please repeat it again with the last
Too late. Yeah. I hardly ever can repeat myself. However, I have these written in different books and so forth. And also, you notice they are videotaping this, and they are going to make it available. And you can have it, and you can go back to it. And, but the whole process and dynamics of creating a unified approach, a unity-based approach to life is one of the greatest challenges that every one of us have. First, we have to understand what is the law of unity, and then we have to see how we can create unity. Now, unity has to take place at a number of levels, okay? The first level is to create inner unity. How do you create inner unity? You see, most of the time, people have inner conflict, right? Very few people have inner peace. See? How you create inner peace? How you create inner unity? Well, in order to create inner unity, first you have to create unity between the powers of the soul. In other words, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions have to be in harmony with each other. Most of the time, we think one thing, we feel another thing, and we do a third thing. And we feel disunited. We feel uncomfortable. For example, many of you right now say, you know, I wish he would stop talking so that I can go out in nice out and beautiful. But at the same time, say, well, I have to stay, you know, inner disunity. See, the whole idea of creating inner unity is to learn how to bring our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions together. Now, feelings are the barometers of our state of love. In other words, different feelings are indicators of our state of love. When we are in a positive, healthy state of love relationship, we feel calm, we feel assured, we feel happy, we feel joyous, we are with it. Talk about that. What are your fundamental ethical principles? Now, whatever those ethical principles are, there is one other condition necessary for you to be truly in a state of inner peace, inner unity. And that means that your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions have to be in harmony with each other, and in harmony with your principles, and your principles have to be universal. They have to be inclusive, not exclusive. Because as soon as you exclude some people from the domain of your principles, then no longer you're in a state of unity. No longer you're in a state of unity. A state of unity doesn't allow an exception. Nobody can be outside of a state of unity, of the circle of unity. Okay? Therefore, the inner peace, inner unity can be established when our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are in harmony with each other. And they are in harmony with our fundamental moral, ethical principles. And our moral, ethical principles are universal. And when you reflect on the teachings of the Baha'i faith, we see this is exactly what we are called upon to be. This is how we have to become. Okay? To become universal beings, whole beings. Beings that are function according to the law of unity. So that first level of unity is inner unity. Then, of course, comes unity between you and other people, which is very difficult. Why unity between you and other people is difficult? Have you ever thought about it? Well, unity between us and others is difficult because a stage of unity, the condition of unity, is when thoughts, feelings, and actions that are different from different people come face to face. Suddenly you are interfacing somebody who is thinking differently, who shows his love differently or her love differently, who wants to do different things, who makes decisions in different way, whose way of showing his or her will is different. And suddenly there is a clash of souls, okay? Clash between ideas, between sentiments, and between actions. And that is what happens in interpersonal relationships. There is a clash between these issues. And the reason that there is a clash is because people think that their way of thinking is the only way of thinking. Or their way of feeling is the only legitimate way of feeling. Or their mode of actions are the best modes of action. Okay? Why? Because we think our worldview is the normal, healthy worldview. They are abnormal. Okay? So in the marriage, many times, people say, I love you if you do this and that and that and that. Yeah, love you the way I want you to be. If you are the way that I want you to be, I love you. You see? You just change your mind. Just, show love differently. And you can't do that, of course. You see? That's impossible. So, one of the signs of maturation is our ability to appreciate diversity. The sign of maturity, one of the signs of maturity, is the ability to appreciate diversity. Another sign of maturity is the ability to put forward ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions in the context of moderation. Usually people put their ideas in the context of extremism. They are really sure, okay? You cannot be sure about anything in life, But when it comes to relationship, we become really sure, really right, okay? So if we keep those two things in mind, moderation on the one hand, you see, and also the issue of relativity. Things are truth, or access to truth of what we think is right, is relative, is not absolute. We don't understand anything at the absolute level. You see, there comes no time that you can say, now I know everything. Okay? Or now I love completely, I cannot love anymore. Can you imagine that? You know, that's not the case. You know, Avicenna, you know who Avicenna was? Ibn Sina. Avicenna was one of the great philosophers of Persia and of Islam. And he was at once a physician, a philosopher, a mathematician, a student of laws, and many other branches of knowledge at that time, at his time, most renowned. Avicenna wrote a textbook on medicine, which called the Book of Law. And it was the textbook of medical schools in Europe for 300 years. Okay? And he wrote a book about the law, and he called it the Book of Healing. He changed medicine and law. Law has to be healing, and medicine has to be lawful, you know, according to principles, laws of science. Anyway, close to the end of his life, he wrote a poem. And this poem says, تا به دنجا رسید دانش من تا بدانم همی که نادانم. You agree? He said, now has reached my knowledge to the point that I know that I do not know. Okay? And this is fundamental in human relationships. That we always have to remember that in relationships we are students. We are students to learn from each other. Relationships is not a condition that you teach the other. Relationships are conditions in which you learn from each other. Okay? And if we approach relationships with that process, that way of thinking, that would be the medium of unity. Because when we both are students, okay, and both become teachers at the same time, you create an integrative role. Student role becomes integrated. And in that integrative role, then you create a state of unity at the interpersonal level. In other words, at the interpersonal level, force or authority or command do not work. At the interpersonal level, what works is the ability to reciprocate, to interact on an equal basis. Okay? So, there is more to be talked about, because not only we have to create inner peace and interpersonal peace, then we have to have a social peace, right? Social unity. Social unity is essential, because if a society, if a community of people are not united, then of course you have conflicts and war. And look what conflict and war does in this world. So for a moment, it's a good idea to think about what are the prerequisites of social unity? Unity at the societal and global level, okay? And unity at societal global level has certain preconditions. In the Baha'i writings, I'm sure you have encountered, those of you who have studied the Baha'i faith, that says that the prerequisite for peace is what? Is unity. Is the fundamental prerequisite for peace. To create peace in this world or in a marriage is unity. Now, the precondition for unity is justice. You cannot create unity unless you create a state of justice. Okay? Now, the precondition for justice is equality. Equality of opportunities and of rights. Something that you were referring to earlier. The world is unjust because it doesn't give equal opportunities and equal access and equal rights for everybody, men and women, and minorities, majorities, and insiders, outsiders. And so, prerequisite for peace is unity. Prerequisite for unity is justice. Prerequisite for justice is equality. Prerequisite for equality is maturity. We have to mature as individuals in order to be able to act in an equal basis. Most of the people are in constant state of competition with other people. We are in competition with other people. Therefore, we cannot relate to them as equals. You see, the only way that you can relate to other people as equals is when you feel comfortable about yourself. You accept yourself for who you are. And then focus on your own constant process of evolution and development and growth and maturation. And as you do that, then you don't need to compete with others. You compete with yourself. You compete with yourself, meaning that you constantly aspire towards higher levels of excellence, pursuit of excellence. So the competition becomes the process of personal pursuit of excellence. And as you do that, you become a better person. The great dimension of a state of maturity is universality. In other words, we cannot be mature if we are not universal beings. We have to, our views, our concepts, our ideas, and everything that we do, our moral principles, they have to be universal. We have to make them more and more inclusive as if we want to become mature persons. So the issue of universality and maturation are totally interconnected with each other. So we are talking about how to develop different levels of unity and capacities for unity, and we said would be inner unity, interpersonal unity, social, global unity, we have talked about it. And then, of course, is unity with the divine. Why unity with the divine? Unity with the divine has its some of his roots, one of his roots at least, is related to the fact that we human beings are ultimately powerless and ultimately alone. Meaning, doesn't matter how powerful we are subject to the laws of existence that are not within our control. First of all, we all need to eat, which soon you are going to. And we need to sleep, which you would do it this afternoon after eating. So those are taken care of, okay? So, but doesn't matter how powerful we are, we get sick. Disease come our ways. Disasters come our ways. Unexpected things happen to us. None of these are within our control. We are subject to processes of destiny, which we don't have much control over. What we have a control over is how we respond to these unexpected processes. And that's where the relationship with the divine comes in. If we have only materialistic way of life, we are totally hopeless and helpless in the face of the unexpected, powerful forces of existence that are superior to us, and they are beyond our control. We don't have a control over them. It is here that the relationship between the individual and God becomes so fundamental. It is here that we begin to connect ourselves with the source of our power, our knowledge, our love, our mercy, our compassion. And here it helps us to become more universal in the process. Because the ultimate point of weakness in human beings is that we all die. And because we all die, it is fundamental for us to reflect on the dying process. And it is fundamental that we develop a healthy attitude towards this inevitable event in our lives. Abdu'l-Baha says the source of all calamities is the fear of annihilation, fear of becoming nothing. Many people feel that when they die, they become nothing. It is that fear that causes human beings to do many stupid things. Okay? And the most stupid things that people do because of that fear is that they kill. They destroy life. Because there is this psychological abnormal process that gives you a feeling that if you can destroy a life, you also can maintain it. So we destroy life thinking that would maintain our lives, which of course it doesn't happen that way. But this is a very deep psychological process. We don't need to talk about it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the relationship between humanity and divinity it has different dimensions. One dimension of it is the fact that we are ultimately helpless. And it is that connection with the source of our power that gives us the necessary courage to live. But the other one, which is even more important, is that the divine is transcendent. It is beyond us, is above us, is greater than us. And therefore, when we connect ourselves to the source of the divine, we help our souls to aspire to higher and higher levels of existence, of being. And therefore, our process of development doesn't become entangled with the mundane little things of everyday life. Because materialism, and this is the materialistic civilization that we live in, okay? Materialism is like a spider web. You know, a spider web is a very, very interesting phenomenon. A spider is very smart. The spider is materialism, okay? What the spider does, he comes and says, oh, this is a nice corner. May I just sit there for a moment? So, all right, this is a little animal. Doesn't hurt, looks nice, and said. So he just sits in the corner and says, do you mind if just make a little silk in that corner? And then it just makes a beautiful little silk. And you look at it and say, oh, that's nice. And if the light goes at it, it shines and shows a beautiful, you know, web that is created there. And you say, thank you to a spider, you know, that make my corner nice and so forth. And then a fly comes and looks at it. Fly is us. Fly comes and looks at it and says, oh, that's nice. I want to go there. And the fly goes to this nice, silky, soft net and get caught and dies. That's the way materialism works. The materialism puts its web all over. It's so nice. Isn't that nice to have this thing and that car and 5 bedrooms and sleep every night in 1 bedroom? And it wouldn't be nice to do this and that, and you do that. So a spider web goes all over, and we fly to it, and we are caught, and we die. Our spirits die. So we live soulless lives. We live soulless lives because we are in the spider web of materialism. Okay? This is very fundamental about the connection with the divine prevents you to fly into the spider web. You take advantage of it. You look at it. You get the necessary segment of it that you need, but you don't go in the web. Because if you do, you're stuck. And that's what gives you the freedom, the courage, the understanding, the foresight, the insight, not to fall into that. Yeah, spider web can be all over, but you're free. You see, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of transcendent and connection with the transcendent, with the divine. Okay? So, unity, therefore, is inner unity, interpersonal unity, societal, global unity, unity with the world of nature, which is the creation of God, and it is so absolutely magnificent and beautiful, and a school of learning constantly, the world of nature, the way that it is, everything. And then the world of the divine that allows you to be transcendent, to be free, and not to fall into that web. When you put all these together, now you're on a path of unity. And the way, therefore, you conduct your actions in your personal life would be according to principles of unity, interpersonal life. That's where the law of love comes in, and that's the first thing that we will talk about this afternoon. And then it allows you, in the context of the institution of the society, learn the ways of justice, because the responsibility of the institutions of society is to bring about justice, isn't it? In the the whole Baha'i administration is based on houses of justice. Local assemblies, national assemblies, universal house of justice. The whole new civilization of unity is going to be civilization of justice. So we have to learn the ways of justice, how to be just. Have you ever asked yourself, what does it mean for me to be a just person? You see? And the ways of equality, but that's how to create equal relationship, how to create justice, how to maintain the rights of individuals. That's when you get involved in the structure of this family and the structure of the society and so forth. All these issues, therefore, become parts and parcels of life of the individual. Individual on the path of unity, with a unity-based worldview. So unity-based worldview, therefore, totally transforms your being. It, first of all, it makes sure that you are safe. Because in the context of unity, you're safe. You're never alone. It is in the context of conflict that you're alone and you have enemies. But in the context of unity, your survival needs are met. The reason that we have in our world today so many hungry people is not because there is not enough food in this world. It's because there is no justice. And there is no justice because we don't realize that humanity is one. And therefore, we destroy the food instead of giving it to the poor. There was a statistics a few years ago by the World Health Organization that was really revealing. It showed at that time that the number of undernourished masses of humanity was the same as number of overfed masses of humanity. In other words, those excesses at deprivation and at indulgence were the same. If we had made all moderate, everybody would be healthy, nobody would be hungry, and nobody would be unhealthy with regard to their weight and so forth. That's the way it is. So these are the kind of the world that we are trying to create, the kind of society, the kind of families that we have to create, has to have that orientation, that worldview, the unity-based worldview, that addresses these issues. And then the issues of power, the power in the worldview structure becomes the power to unite, the power to do good, the power to bring equality, the power to create justice, the power to create a new civilization of peace. That becomes the power, not the power to control other people. And the competition gives way to pursuit of excellence. You pursue excellence because ultimately You cannot become better than your best, right? We have to constantly evolve and become better and better and better. Therefore, we compete with ourselves. Competition would be the process of self-development. And self-development always takes place in the context of relationships with other people, with humanity, with family, with marriage, with everything. You cannot develop in vacuum. We develop in the context of relationships. So I didn't expect to talk so much. There's so many notes. It makes me, So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions and answers. When we come back in the afternoon, we will have a time for that. I tell you what would be the remaining portions of our time today. When we come back, we will talk about love in general, and then we talk about love in the context of marriage, and in the context of before marriage and after marriage, and in the context of the family. Then we talk about different kinds of marriage. Probably that not all would be done today. Maybe that some of them we have to do tomorrow.